Think about the last time you sat down to look at your bank statement. It's usually a Sunday evening or maybe the first of the month. You have that specific, quiet resolve to finally get on top of things. You see the numbers. They don't quite add up to the life you thought you were living. There's a strange gap between what you remember buying and where the money actually went. You might notice a series of small, unremarkable charges, $9 here, $14 there. They seem almost too insignificant to question. We tend to treat these as rounding errors in the math of our lives. We tell ourselves that as long as we track the big stuff, like the rent or the car payment, we're in control. But here's the thing. That gap isn't an accident. It's not because you're bad at math. It's the result of a very deliberate architecture. It is designed to ensure that budgeting remains a recurring dream rather than a reality. By the way, my name's Arlo. In this video, we're going to uncover the hidden systems that corporations use to bypass your logic and automate your spending. If you find these insights helpful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps me continue producing these deep dives into our daily mechanics. Now let's start with how we usually try to fix the problem. We downloaded an app. We've been told for a decade that the solution to financial leakage is more data. So we link our accounts to a colorful interface. It categorizes our spending. It feels productive. You see a little red bar for dining out and a green one for groceries. But if you look closer, you'll see the first quiet reversal. Most budgeting tools are built by companies that profit from your engagement with the financial system. They aren't designed to stop you from spending. They're designed to make you feel comfortable while you do it. It's a psychological buffer. When you see your expenses neatly categorized, your brain checks a box. You feel the dopamine hit of organizing without actually changing a single behavior. In behavioral economics, we call this the planning fallacy. But there's a deeper layer here. It's the illusion of control. Let's say you decide to cut back on subscriptions. You find 3 services you don't use and cancel them. You save maybe $35 a month. You feel great. But while you were focused on those $35, the platforms you do use were busy shifting the goalposts. Think about how many services have quietly introduced a premium tier lately. It's usually a small bump, maybe $3. It seems negligible, but if you have 5 of those services, that's $15 a month. That is $180 a year extracted without a single new feature being added to your life. We're not even talking about inflation here. We're talking about feature decay. This is where you pay more just to maintain the experience you already had. This leads us to a specific cognitive bias. It's called hyperbolic discounting. It's the human tendency to choose smaller, immediate rewards over larger, later ones. Corporations understand this better than we do. They know that if they can break a large annual cost into a low monthly payment of $19.99, your brain stops processing the total. To your prehistoric mind, $19.99 is a day's worth of effort. $240 is a daunting mountain. By the time you realize the mountain has been moved into your backyard, shovelful by shovelful, the habit is already formed. You might notice this pattern in the rise of buy now, pay later schemes. They're at the checkout counter at almost every major retailer now. It's framed as a tool for flexibility, a way to help you budget for a larger purchase. But the numbers tell a different story. Research shows that users of these services spend up to 20% more per transaction than those paying up front. Why? Because the system has successfully decoupled the pleasure of the purchase from the pain of payment. By the time the 4th installment hits your account 6 weeks later, the item is already dusty, but the extraction continues. It is invisible and automated. Now think about the convenience fee. It's a term we've become desensitized to. We pay it for tickets, for food delivery, for parking. It's usually a flat rate or a small percentage like 2.5%. On a single $40 grocery delivery, a $5 fee feels like a fair trade. But let's look at the escalating logic. If you use that service twice a week, that's $520 a year just in fees. Not food, not fuel, just the bridge between you and the product. Over 5 years, that's $2,600. That's not a convenience, that's a tax on your exhaustion. The system relies on a simple trick. You'll calculate the cost of a single instance, but never the lifetime value of the habit. That's where it gets interesting. The industry isn't just selling you products anymore, it's selling you a frictionless existence. But friction is the only thing that allows for a budget to exist. Without friction, money isn't a resource you manage, it's a fluid that leaks out of every interaction. We've moved from a world of buying to a world of metered access. The meter is always running, even when you're asleep. Now that we see the architecture, we have to look at how it scales. We've been talking about small fees and subscriptions, but the real extraction happens when these micro-behaviors are baked into our identity. We start to view certain leaks as the baseline cost of being an adult. Think about the way loyalty programs work. On the surface, they seem to reward you for your consistency. You get a free coffee after 10 purchases or a discount on your next flight. But in the world of behavioral design, these are commitment devices. Once you are silver tier or gold status, you stop shopping around. You stop comparing prices. You don't want to lose your progress.
The corporation has successfully turned a financial transaction into a game of status. Here's the reality. The data shows that loyal customers often pay a premium. They're less likely to notice price creep. They aren't looking at the market, they're looking at their points balance. You might think you're gaming the system for a free flight, but if you're spending 10% more on every hotel stay just to stay in the ecosystem, you've prepaid for that flight 3 times over. What happens next is even more subtle. It's the subscriptionification of physical objects. We're seeing it with cars. Heated seats or increased horsepower are now locked behind a monthly paywall. We see it with printers that won't scan if your ink subscription is overdue. This is a fundamental shift in the concept of ownership. When you own a tool, you have a fixed cost. When you access a service, the cost is indefinite. Let's do the math for a second. If you pay $15 a month for a software suite instead of buying it for $300, you feel like you've won in year 1. But by year 4, you've overpaid. By year 10, you've paid $1,800 for the same utility. Over a 40-year career, that's a $7,200 difference for one single tool. Multiply that by every piece of technology in your life. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in silent capital transfer. We're not even talking about the psychological toll yet. There's a concept in psychology called decision fatigue. Every time you have to choose whether or not to spend money, you use a bit of your cognitive reserve. Corporations know this. They design systems to minimize the number of no moments. Auto refill, one-click ordering, biometrics, they are all designed to remove the moment of reflection. If you don't have to reach for your wallet, your brain doesn't register the loss. It's just a digital blip. Think about the way we'd been conditioned to view the deal. We see a 30% discount. Our brain registers savings. But in a budget, a saving only exists if that money stays in your account. If you spend $70 on something you didn't need just because it was $100 yesterday, you haven't saved $30. You've lost $70. The system uses the anchoring effect. It makes us feel like we're winning while we're actually being extracted from. The original price is the anchor. Anything below it feels like a victory. Here's where the identity flip happens. We start to define our success by our ability to afford these convenience taxes. We tell ourselves that we're too busy to cook, too busy to manage our own investments, too busy to look at the fine print. We wear our exhaustion as a badge of honor. The market is more than happy to sell us a solution for it. But these solutions are recursive. You work more to pay for the conveniences that help you handle the stress of working more. It's a closed loop. If you step back and look at the lifetime cost translation, the numbers are staggering. The average person could easily lose 20% of their lifetime earnings to these invisible systems. Interest, fees, subscriptions, convenience premiums. That's nearly 10 years of your working life. You are working solely to feed the architecture of extraction. So how do we develop defensive awareness? It's not about being a miser, it's about reintroducing friction. It's about looking at every small monthly cost and multiplying it by 10. When you see a $5 bump as a $600 decade-long commitment, the math changes. When you realize that one click is a trap for your impulse control, you start to delete your saved credit card info. You start to realize that a budget isn't a list of what you can't do, it's a map of where your freedom is leaking out. The closing truth is that the system doesn't need to steal your money in one big heist. It doesn't need to scam you. It just needs you to be slightly distracted, slightly tired, slightly overcommitted. It relies on the cumulative power of just this once. But when just this once becomes the default setting for millions of people, it creates a massive silent transfer of wealth. It goes from the individual to the institution. The most effective way to resist is simply to notice, to see the design for what it is. Once the system is visible, it loses its power. You start to see that the budgeting myth isn't that you can't save money, it's the idea that the system is helping you do it. If you found this breakdown of the hidden financial systems useful, feel free to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives. Would you like me to look into how certain credit card rewards programs actually encourage higher interest debt patterns for my next video?